Hello everybody and welcome to my level retrospective. I'm Matthias Worch. I've been making games for the last 17 years. I pretty much grew up as a level designer and have been a game designer afterwards as well, and I realized I should just be looking back at all of the levels I made in my past because they've very much informed what kind of game designer I am today, what I believe about game design and so on. So in the first 3 streams of this we actually looked at my early Doom levels. And today we're ready to move on to something I'm really excited about, which is Quake and Beyond Belief, which was my single-player Quake episode. It was a complete 8/8.5 level replacement for Quake 1 Episode 1, and ultimately it was a logical extension of what I had already done in Doom, and it was the episode that ultimately got me my first job in the gaming industry, where I started working for Virtual Entertainment. So Beyond Belief is a classic, certainly in my eyes, because I still love it. I really like what I was able to do with that. Before we get to Beyond Belief, I actually want to do something that I did with my Doom levels early on, and maybe take a look at some of the really early beginnings, because Beyond Belief and those levels were in the very first levels I made for Quake. There were actually a couple of levels I did before to kind of, just get into Quake editing, understand the ropes, learn the ropes and understand everything there was to understand about Quake editing. So if we are going down memory lane just a little bit, give you just an idea what I made all these levels with, because this was in 1996, right? 1996, 1997, and there weren't really that many level editors out there, certainly not as they came online. When I started making Doom levels, from the very beginning there was a whole bunch of stuff out there, a bunch of established level editors as well, but for Quake everything just started coming online as the game came out. So you kind of picked the early Quake editor that you liked, and I never really got into Worldcraft, for example. I actually ended up using Quest, and I don't want to say I was stuck with it, because I don't think that's true at all. I actually really liked that editor, but it certainly had certain I don't want to say drawbacks, but certain peculiarities and certain just like characteristics that everybody who was making Quake levels at that point had to deal with. For example, it did not have a textured view. So this is Quest, and this is actually a picture that I took, I don't know, it must have been a few years ago, and I actually filmed it. I took a picture of my monitor because there wasn't an easy way in DOS for me at that time to take a picture of, well, anyway, to take a screenshot. So actually this is actually photographed of the screen. But this is pretty much what my daily view looked like. This is what me making levels looked like for, I don't know, must have been 6 or 7 months or something like that. You can see it's all wireframe. You might see those little red dots in here. See, actually there's one of my custom textures selected up here. I have a couple more pictures which I found yesterday. So this is from a Linux build. It might be a little bit clearer as well. And you can actually see, so all of these brushes are wireframe. You see these red dots in the middle. You control-clicked on them to actually select, and then you had various ways to edit and manipulate them between vertex editing, face editing, and so on. But you never actually had a textured view when you were working on this stuff, right? So this was the entity view, pretty straightforward. This was your texture view, so you would just go into a separate screen. It would just replace the 3D view, and you would click at all those textures. And then you would start, well, this is actually setting the default texture, but it would look pretty similar. You would actually apply your textures, and then you would, without ever seeing it in the editor, you would try to align all your textures. Then you would BSP your entire map, and you would see what things looked like. In fact, when I started using Quest, there wasn't even texture alignment in the editor. It just didn't exist yet. So the first few maps, all the texture alignment, well, for one, there's a couple of things. For one, in Quake, textures were actually aligned automatically to a grid, right? To a world grid. So that made things a little bit easier. But beyond that, I actually did my texture alignment in WordPad or in a text editor. So if we're looking at one of these maps, for example, see if I can open one up here. Did not actually prepare this, so I'm not sure what this is going to load in. Okay, this is trying to, in the background, trying to load Visual Studio, which is not something that we actually want to use. Let me see. Let's just use Notepad right here. and make sure Notepad is active. Okay, so as we're going out, you might be able to see kind of here. I mean, this is what a typical Quake map file looks like. There's nothing special about this, right? And especially if you're still doing Quake editing today, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a coordinate system in a text file, which was then interpreted by BSP, the tool, and was turned into the actual map. But I would pretty much very early on go into any of these brushes, put a specific texture on here, if you can read this. So this is metal 4_4, for example. Put a texture on there that I knew wasn't anywhere else in the map, and then I would find it in the map editor, you know, by just searching, and then I would actually do the texture alignment with using these values right here. And then I would go BSP it, and I would actually see if the texture was aligned now. So this was very early on, and it's not like I was like really special about that. In fact, the very first Quake map was made completely in Notepad, kind of famously. That's before any of these editors were out. But just to give you an idea of what the lay of the land was at that point, and what people really did to make maps at that point. So ultimately, that was Quest. After a while, and we'll go into maybe a little bit later, after I had completely finished Beyond Belief, I switched to BSP. This, for example, this is like several years old now, but this was a late version of BSP that I used to make Beyond Belief 2008, right? And it wasn't quite that fancy back then. It didn't necessarily have any sort of OpenGL acceleration and so on, but at some point at the end I actually did have textured mode, and I was also able to brush clip, because one of the things that I couldn't really do in BSP was to clip brushes. So pretty much every single brush, like literally every single brush in Beyond Belief is a rectangle, or you know, it's a cube pretty much, which was then squashed and stretched and so on. And if I wanted a six-sided like supposedly round bar, for example, that would actually be 3 different brushes, one in the middle and then 2 on the side, with the 2 corners kind of drawn in to create those kind of shapes. And you can kind of see that in here. If you're looking down here, for example, these are all cubes. This is map 5, I guess, Beyond Belief 5, and you can kind of see how everything is kind of drawn around, and a whole bunch of faces were just kind of drawn into the walls, for example, if I didn't need them. Also means that all of the mountain ranges and so on that you see, this for example up here, right, that's a mountain range. It's pretty much just a bowl in Beyond Belief, because what Hypnotic did, for example, you know, Ritual did for their Quake mission pack, where they created these really nice mountain ranges, or even something like this, which isn't awesome, right? But for Quake, you're trying to create like various natural shapes. That just was a pain in the ass and wasn't really possible in Quest, because you couldn't create those kind of shapes easily in the first place. I'm not even sure if you ever could. I'm honestly not sure. I kind of lost track of it in the end. But yep. So I would say, before talking much more about this, let's look at some of the early maps before we get to Beyond Belief, where I kind of got my feet wet. And this was just interesting for me to kind of go back to it and remember what it was like to just learn the ropes. Because obviously I was an accomplished Doom level designer at this point, but it doesn't necessarily mean I pretty much had to start from scratch in so many different ways, right? So as we're going into Quake here, this is actually Quake Spasm, which a bunch of really helpful people on Twitter, like some of them are on the stream right now, like Neki, helped me figure out. But so the way I understand it, this used to be Quake, and then somebody took it over and made it 64-bit compatible and so on. The reason I like Quake in the first place of all of these Quake ports is because I actually got to work with Fitz. John Fitzgibbons, who created Quake and is still running Funk Message Board, I think, like the entire underlying web page behind it. He was actually a level designer on Dead Space 2, so we got to work together. He was hired after me. I actually remember interviewing him, and he was working as a programmer at that point, and he wanted to get back into level design, and that's how we got to work together on an entire game. So I feel a certain kinship with Quake Spasm and Quake, because it's pure, right? Like, I think the sensibilities behind this are really good. With that said, we will look at Dark Places a little bit in the end as well, just to give you some idea. I feel, in fact, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to slowly work my way up through the graphics options. I'm going to start, and let's just open up Armageddon 1. We're going to start with a somewhat classical Quake view, where yes, the resolution that I'm using here is of course way higher. When we started playing Quake, everything was running in 320 by 200, but everything in here is set to actually be pixelated textures, and you know, this has just the traditional lighting and so on, and this is pretty much what it used to look like. If on the stream you guys can tell me if this is coming through a little bit too dark, by the way, like the gamma, then I will adjust, because I would like to make sure that you guys can actually see whatever I'm showing here. And so this is Quake, this is Armageddon 1. It's probably not the very first map I ever made, it's certainly the first map I ever finished though. I remember distinctly, we were at a LAN party where we're still mostly playing Doom, and it must have been Quake or Q-Test at that point. In Church 1 I actually started just using Quest to make my very first Quake map, which was just a room with a ramp in it, and trying to figure out what the actual what the proportions were and so on. And then afterwards, this was pretty much, as you can see, or if you remember my Doom stream, my very first one, where I showed just kind of discovering the tools and so on. This was just me getting my feet wet and making 3D spaces, right? And figuring out how textures work and which textures work well together. Every room is pretty much a different theme and so on. So let me try one thing here. And that is to make sure that this actually comes through as full screen, because I'm not sure why it is not. It should actually come through as full screen. Interesting. So let me try to figure this out real quick. I actually had everything running earlier, and I thought I had everything running in full screen correctly, like stretched properly. But now it is not. So that's something that is interesting to me. One thing I can try here. Let's go into the video options, and instead of using 720p, it might actually, for whatever reason. Okay, so for whatever reason, it likes 5x4. That's better. So now it should actually be full screen, and I think that's just gonna look better. So better, everybody? I hope you guys can see, and now it's I think this looks good, and even if it's just a little bit off, this looks like Quake to me in all of its glory. So as you can see, every room has a different theme. I made this as a deathmatch map, which, you know, has a rocket launcher in the middle here. Hey, how do I do lava? Well, that's how I do lava. Let's figure that out. Let's put some stairs in here and so on. I tried some early, I think, Quake deathmatch bots in here. But so as you go up here, figuring out exactly how to make movers for the first time, so as you're going in here, was an interesting thing. And the idea was there would just be a small deathmatch map that we would use together. You're looking at a orange bridge and then blue kind of metal theme, of course, none of this really goes together, but, you know, just learning the ropes and kind of cutting your teeth on all of this stuff. And then as you went all the way up here, this was me, I think, probably for the first time figuring out how to go Sky Dome. I like how in Fitzquake it actually, you still have the collision with the sky, which, you know, you didn't have. I think in some Quake ports and in GL Quake you didn't get that. But yeah. And then, hey, here's a mover. This might have been the first one or the one we looked at before, and this goes back every so often. You can actually see how in GL Quake or Fitzquake or whatever, they're actually overlapping and you see the Z fighting and so on. So there's not much to this, right? But this was me just like getting my feet wet, and this was the very first map I ever made. After this, of course, and this was just a deathmatch map, we might have played it a little bit. It's probably not particularly fun. Let's be honest, it's way too small as well, and, you know, it doesn't really have much like sensibilities really attached to it. It's a pretty square layout. Like you can see how I just put things in here and saw what would happen. Afterwards, I wanted to make one more map before I really started making maps, I would think, and this was then Armageddon 2. Which I will make a little bit brighter for all of us so we can see better. see if that's better, so people can see just a little bit more. And you know, if we blow the gamma out a little bit, that's just the way it's going to be. So if you watched my first stream for Doom and you watched that deathmatch level I made very early on, this might actually look familiar, because this map in the beginning is very heavily influenced by exactly... You know, I'm just going to play this on medium difficulty. I'm not even going to do skill 4 for this one, because I'm just trying to demonstrate. Plus, I'm not sure how good I am at Quake anymore. But if you're looking at this this layout, this is actually pretty similar to what I had in that early deathmatch map. Specifically what you have up there and the way you go in here. This was actually conceived mostly as a deathmatch map, which I then added some single player to. It was set up for a friend who was running a mailbox at that point, who was then going to run a deathmatch server for me, and we had like one of these early camera systems where you could actually follow along, so I was fully set up for that. But yeah, this was me pretty much remaking my first deathmatch map. If you're going in here, for example, you will see quite a few similarities to that deathmatch map in Doom, and what I'm doing here with the layout, the way you come in, you go around the corner, and you actually go into this room right here. Yeah. And so this was me just kind of learning the ropes of single player design. Now I will talk and probably rant a little bit about actual Quake single player as we're going through this, especially because we just came from Doom, right? And I certainly have an opinion on how good Doom was as a single player game and how not so good Quake was as a single player game, especially in hindsight. But let's not worry about that quite yet. So remember, this was all done in wireframe, right? These textures were all aligned using Notepad at that point, especially down here. In fact, that's why not all of this is actually perfectly aligned, because there's only so much that I could do. But these runes specifically, when they were off, they're on a 32 grid I believe, or 16 grid, they might have been off every so often, so making sure all this lines up was actually done there specifically. Make sure that these were actually aligned. As we play through here. So there's nothing spectacular about this as a single player map. I haven't actually played this for a while. I played the beginning here just to make sure this worked out, but I will actually be out of my element pretty soon. There's progression in here. Actually remember just finding out the limitations of the engine, like in old software Quake. See, looking at this, I was running out of R surfaces, and that things started just going gray in the background because we didn't have enough memory. I guess that's the reason why things didn't quite work, and you know, stuff actually went away in the back. And I think there's a couple of different tricks that I employed to get everything back up into memory or just like visible in the first place. I think this up there, for example, is a mover because that didn't count towards the polygons or something like that. Whoa. I was actually a huge fan of Quake Episode 3, all of the stuff that American McGee did there specifically. It's kind of fun that I didn't do. This is pretty much the only blue metal map I made beyond Secret Map and Beyond Belief. And that's pretty much it, really. Some reason, you know, I think this is really cool. It's somewhat prescriptive, somewhat limiting in what you can actually do with these and I figured, you know, like how many more metal maps can you make? Like how are you gonna stand out? Or, you know, like it pretty much has already come in and completely covered that. So that's one of the reasons why I probably didn't do much more with it. But I always like the maps. And that's probably why after just like trying out everything, I went into this. It's kind of safe theme as well. There's only so many textures you even have to worry about. Alright, let's save. Yeah. So at some point, one of the things I remember specifically about this room, the compile times, remember this was 1996 or so, I see just on the stream now, are things a little bit choppy. I think they might entirely be because just looking at my stream and looking at OBS, things are a little bit choppy there as well. And that might just be my computer, and you'll just think we'll just have to deal with that and we'll have to live with it. My computer might not have the horsepower. This is a MacBook Pro from 2011 running Windows, and it doesn't necessarily have the graphics drivers are from 2011, and it just doesn't have it's like an old Radeon mobility card. It might just not have the horsepower to fully do this at 30 frames per second on the stream. I hope it's not it's actually running smooth for me as I'm playing, right? So I hope we don't get too distracted by it, and that's just something we'll have to deal with. But yeah, I was just talking about at some point the BSP times, because this was in '96 and it was like running on a Pentium 90, I believe, if I had it at that point. Yeah, I think it was a P90. It took a while to actually do all of this stuff. So at some point Quest came in and created these groupings where you could actually group certain brushes into, you could sub-partition a level and only BSP certain parts of the level. But early on, that wasn't actually the truth. So what I would do instead is to copy and paste certain parts of the map that I was currently working on, finding those brushes in the text file and putting them in a separate map file. So I could BSP smaller maps. So all of this stuff back here was missing, and only this part right here was actually there while I was working on it, and I could do a quicker job of like BSPing it. No, that's all things that you don't have to do today again, but back then you were just as resourceful as possible, because you had to be. Like creating like BSP times, I'll talk about it more when we get to to actual Beyond Belief at some point. And that was through the roof. For some of my maps, they took a day or two to actually do a vis pass. Not so much BSP, but certainly doing the vis pass on stuff. So yeah, you just had to be resourceful, and that's one way in which I did it. Ogres, one of the few enemy types I feel actually provide interesting and fun combat. So I think this right here is a switch that only works in multiplayer, not necessarily well communicated though. And I just ran into that switch. So this is going to be something, and we will find out, because we had these helpful arrows, right, that actually showed us where we had to go. In here, for example, now this is pretty much me as a level designer talking at you straight, right, like saying something like, oops. I don't think I did that a lot. I actually did it a little bit in the following levels. Something that I would never do today, just because, like the level designer should be as invisible as possible in all of this. But yeah, back then. And I think the oops is actually, you see this, there's actually the key down there. How do I get to the key? So that's part of it. This allows me to go back, and that's how we have some connectivity here. Let's use the switch here. The stairs have been lowered. We didn't really know that we had stairs, do we? I will show you in a second where they were, in case you don't already know. But yeah. So this was me, for example, trying to recreate a Cacodemon kind of setup that you would have in Doom, right? Just purely on an interest level, or trying to apply what I knew. This is how you would kind of try to create gameplay in here. And I think that kind of works for these scrags. Are they called scrags or skags? I think it was scrags, right? Wizards was the internal name, of course. But yeah, just trying to get some gameplay, and again, I don't think I was even fully cognizant of it. I wasn't fully aware of the fact of why Quake gameplay wasn't working as well. I still like playing it a lot, but just why it wasn't quite as good as Doom. We'll talk about that. If you followed my other stream, you most certainly know why I think that is. Because we're going to talk about prioritization and unit differentiation and all those things, which you don't really get out of Quake. For multiple reasons. One of them, so in the, like in GL Quake, we actually see Z fighting here again, right? One reason is just because there weren't as many enemies on the screen at the same time, which makes it hard, but also because I just feel that everything feels a little bit unfinished about this, where the entire gameplay loop in Quake, where I think John Romero actually said it on our last stream, that they iterated on the gameplay loop for like a year and had it all in place in many ways. Where that it didn't really feel like that happened in Quake, and because of that, there's a whole bunch of ways. Hey, look, he gets stuck, and I would like to say that didn't happen in stock Quake. Found a whole bunch of ways in which some of the modern engines are actually fixing a bunch of stuff, but actually breaking my old levels. This might actually have been broken too, and I shouldn't blame the engine, because I think Fitzquake is very, very faithful when it comes to its interpretation of Quake. But yeah, either way, easier for us to take him out. So I think this right here, for example, a lot of these are actually movers, the actual entities, because all of these walls would, in deathmatch, would disappear. If I go behind this, see that this entire part here would be open, and if you compare that to what my Doom deathmatch level that I showed looks like, once again you'll see a lot of commonalities right there. And I think that's pretty much the map. Hello, one more ogre. And that was pretty much it. Step into the teleport to exit the level. I don't even know if there's any secrets in here. There are not. And yeah, still interesting. Hey, at least I killed everybody. So that's pretty much the first single player map I ever made for Quake. You know, it's not terrible, I think, especially by the standard of some of the maps which were out there. I think just in general there was a real lack of good single player levels in Quake for the longest time. A lot of people were really focusing on multiplayer, or were really held up by trying to create incredibly elaborate total conversions which didn't ship ever or took forever to actually come up. But yeah, you know, nothing special, but that's pretty much how I learned the ropes. So let's quit one more time right here, and let's start looking at Beyond Belief. Before I do this, actually, let's start looking. Well, one thing I'm going to do already is bring up the text file so we can take a look at that. Just look at the stream here real quick and see if I've missed anything. There is a real chance, by the way, I'm going to ask you questions about these Quake ports, like Doom. Well, like I'm using Quake Spasm, and I'm going to use Dark Places as well. And as much as I've been able to get a pretty good setup again, it's pretty much just me in. Oops. Here we actually have my browser interfering. Let me get rid of that here real quick. As much as I feel like I've been able to get a good setup here, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have everything figured out. So let's look at the stream right here. Alright, so Neki is giving me more gameplay fixes, especially for Dark Places, which we will get to at some point. But yeah. Gameplay fix, use Quake Spasm 0.9. Okay, so let's see if there's anything in here. Just a whole bunch of people enjoying the stream and talking about stuff, so nothing specifically in here, which is good. Skaki says episode 3 in Quake was the best episode. I'm kind of torn. I like aspects both of episode 1, 2, and 3. I didn't like episode 4 that much, but yeah, there's good things in all of them. Alrighty, so that's thing we have here. So there's a couple of things to look at then. And then one thing we're going to do as we come back into Quake Spasm, we're going to ratchet up. We're going to slowly crank up the graphical fidelity a little bit, right? So when I started making all of these levels, I started playing in 320 by 200, of course. At some point we went up. Didn't usually have the horsepower fully for 640 by 480 as a resolution, so we usually did 512 by 384. But from there, then I actually got for my birthday, and this must have been my 19th birthday, maybe. I got my first Voodoo card, like a Voodoo 1 card. So at that point, I only played GL Quake, and I figure I didn't have that for half of Beyond Belief. So half of it was done in software mode, but half of it actually was done in GL mode. So I think we're going to go to that and just, you know, do a little bit with translucent water and shadows and those kind of things. So somebody's asking me, like Swiffle is asking me on the chat if I still have the GeoCities webpage. I don't know if you're actually asking me, but so the actual, you see it right here, right? This does not exist anymore, unfortunately. And I actually went through archive.org and I could not find it. The one thing I was able to find, as we're bringing it up here, let's see, where are my... I am completely lost. Here it is, of course. I was able to find the old Quest web page, just to give you an idea. So, you know, it was about as barren as actual Quest was, but hey, so this one still exists. You can see that Quest was made by Quake Corallo, who ended up working at Valve. And, well, I think he worked at Ironstorm Austin first, and then he's been at Valve for quite a while. Not exactly sure what happened to Trey Harrison. I know he's out there, and I think I actually looked him up a few... it must have been years ago at this point, but this is what Quest pretty much looked like. These were the features, which was pretty much just a... so there's an actual finger with all the workload. It just gives you an idea of what Quest can actually do. And then as we're going back one here, these were the downloads. And I was actually able to find... I actually have Quest running in DOSBox, but I figured it's not really useful to go through here right now. You already get a pretty good idea that yes, it was wireframe, yes, it was painful, and that's pretty much all we have to look at. One thing you'll see down here are the texture wart downloads. I am assuming a lot of people on the stream are actually still making Quest maps or have done it at some point. But if not, like if you're watching this and you've never actually made Quake maps, all of these WAT files actually have the textures in them, because textures in Quake levels were baked into each BSP file. And the Quake BSP files then had each texture individually as a copy, which had drawbacks but also had a lot of advantages. And so what you see here, you only have all of the textures which exist in the unregistered, like shareware version of Quake. But obviously we had all of those WAT files and used them, and you would be able to reference them in Quest. So yeah, I don't have anymore, as we go back to the text file, I don't have anymore this web page, and unfortunately archive.org does not have an archive of when Beyond Belief was actually like its heyday. It only has an archive of me already going to my newer web page afterwards. Anyway, so this is pretty straightforward. It's a new episode for Quake. There's not that much in here anyway. The credits are in Beyond Belief doc, so we're going to look at that. These were the people who helped specifically. We can look at that as well. You can see my old Okrana email address, which I used for many years. Okrana was our Quake clan that I used played deathmatch in. I actually went to clan Braindead in the end, just because a lot of my friends were in Braindead. But it kind of got, it's really both. I have fond memories of both. Andy here, for example, was in Braindead. Braindead was named after Peter Jackson's movie Braindead, and I think it was called Dead Alive, or what was the... I think it had a different American name, if I remember correctly. I see my green screen is off just a tiny bit on the side here, by the way, but that's gonna go away as soon as we start playing something again. But yeah, so these were the people that helped me, and I give you an idea. So Quest was mostly used. Stoneless, I mostly just kind of went into and tried around with. I actually liked it as an editor, I just never really had the time to fully get into it. Knew what actually was used quite a bit, and this was, I think, Trey Harrison's new... We'll look it up. We'll look it up in the next one, in the document actually, because I think that's what I used to then do a lot of texture alignment in the end. And then yeah. So I do believe that for Beyond Belief, I came up with, and I think that might actually already have been Doom, I came up with a way, like with a pseudo-legal notice that I have seen repeated in many downloads. And you're not allowed to commercially exploit this pack with the CD that's sold. handwritten permission and all of that stuff. But like this specific language right here, commercially exploit this level and so on, is something I hadn't seen before. I put it in one of my Doom, I think the TTP text actually, and for whatever reason it caught on, and all of a sudden you see it everywhere. So I'd like to take credit for it. It's not really important. I might be completely off on that, but you know, if that actually is the case, it's actually pretty damn funny to me, because I was a German high school student who just started attending college, who didn't really know English, and certainly did not know legal English very well, and people kind of started using that. Okay, so let's look at the actual document file, and then we're going to play some of what I'm assuming a lot of you came here for. We're going to play Beyond Belief, of course, and I figure today we're going to get through the first 4 levels or so, and then we're going to save the other 4 levels, as well as Beyond Belief 2008 and some stuff afterwards, maybe some goodies for the stream tomorrow. So this was my Beyond Belief README file. I had to do some reformatting for the stream just so it would actually open in Word correctly, but all of the grammar and all of the words and so on here are actually, you know, the way I used to write right back in 1997. It came out May 14, 1997. I did not know how to spell completely and so on. But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff in here that you should probably read. Like kind of a mission statement. Its foremost aim is to recreate the atmosphere of Quake's first episode, Dimension of the Doom. Doesn't mean it tries to copy the 1M star levels or strictly follow individual levels themes, but it shall leave you with the feeling, yes, that could have been the shareware episode of Quake. And this is me kind of ranting a little bit, right? Where I'm saying, hey, what happened to all of these cool single-player project and single-player level? I somehow got the impression that most people are just sitting there with half of the work done. They're waiting for it or another company to come in and say, hey, looks great, we're going to buy it, or we're going to hire you. And I think that was just me, you know, being a little bit on my high horse, but also it was informed by the sign of the times. There was a lot of times when you would hang out on the Quake IRC channel, for example, and there were all these people like just hanging out or making these grand gestures and talking about all the things they're going to do, and then nothing ever came out of it. And you have to remember that Beyond Belief came out 9 months or so after official Quake came out, right? I mean, this was plenty of time. So I would like to say Quake came out in September 96. You guys can correct me, but I think that is correct. And this came out next May, right? So there actually was a lot of time for people to actually come through and create stuff. And yeah, that didn't necessarily manifest itself, so I kind of went on my high horse. So these are the instructions, which even if you go to Predicted, like the webpage today, where you can download Beyond Belief, of course, some people are still somewhat confused by it, just because, you know, you have to know how to do a directory and set that. Very important, do not override your Quake, your pack 0 from it, because otherwise you're going to screw yourself quite a bit. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of information here about what this is and what it is not. Please do not cheat or you'll spoil your own fun if you keep dying. Maybe choose the lower difficulty. Here's the list of all the levels, and this is how you could actually start them. Welcome to Dying, which was made by me. Mission Control was made by me. Beyond Belief 2, The Cleanse was made by Dennis Möller, Panzer of Take, and me. Another Fine Mess was made by Andy, Andreas Fink, and me. And we're going to look at that, and then the remaining levels were all created by me. So you could, if you wanted to, just jump to all the levels from the console, except for the secret level, which is BB Secret. You know, not that hard to guess, and obviously you could just look into the pack file, but I just tried to actually keep it hidden a little bit. So one thing that was important to me, and you know what, I'm not actually going to talk about it too much now, we're going to talk about it when we actually get there. There's a whole bunch of additional information in here, there's contact information in here, and so on, as well as the Q&A down here, and a whole bunch of stuff. One thing I'll point out, this was something where somebody downloaded Beyond Belief, really enjoyed it, but then scolded me in an email for cursing in the README, and asking, do you really have to use this this language? And me, in my incredibly charming way back then, because I was very, very I had a really short temper on this kind of stuff. You know, I'm not a native English speaker. I hadn't been in America back then. I didn't quite understand what all the fuss was about, cursing and taboo words. This very Puritan kind of American paranoia or, you know, phobia with certain bad words, so this didn't mean a lot to me. I would just talk that way every so often. When I came to America, I cursed like a sailor, left and right, doing deathmatch and so on, because in Germany you just have various words that everybody can say, and you can actually hear them. You can hear them on TV and so on. But you know, this was like my very first introduction to American culture, and I apologize these days if, like, whoever I offended, because again, my response was not diplomatic at all. I remember that. It was pretty much just, you know, if you don't like it, just, you know, go fuck yourself, or it doesn't mean anything to me. Something along those lines. But yeah, I still remember that. So let's go and play some Beyond Belief, because that's ultimately what we came here for. Correct? So I'm going to, in the background here real quick, turn off the GL nearest mipmap linear setting, because I want to actually at this point create something that mimics what GL Quake looked for me, because I played GL Quake whenever I could too. And so here we're back in Fitz Quake, and let me just look in OBS here real quick to make sure everything is actually running there and we're still running correctly. Almost, but not quite. Let's make sure we turn off Word here again. That's one of the reasons why I actually do have Fitzquake running up there, because so I have OBS running up there, because sometimes I don't notice what my screen looks like. And so there's one thing I want to do real quick, because what we see on the left side here of me, that's actually light shining through the green screen. I want to get rid of that real quick, because that is kind of distracting to me. So just 1 second. And let's see as I come back here. I think that looks better. It's just a tiny thing, but hopefully, yeah. One more thing I might be able to do here. I did not have time to actually correctly set up. So, do you guys want to be completely ripped out? Do you want your immersion to just go away? Watch this. Sorry about that, people. And that might just look a little bit better now. Sorry. I know at this point I'm just kind of keeping you from actually getting to Beyond Belief. Why am I doing this? But let me just adjust this correctly. I think something like this. 130. It's going to serve us better as we're going forward. Okay. The magic of broadcasting. It's an actual real green screen behind me, by the way. It's like a portable green screen, but I used to do a bunch of video work, and I used to done some videos for the local racetrack, and that's what I had it for. I used to put like IndyCar race drivers and NASCAR drivers and so on in front of it, so I could, you know, have a green screen available. So here we are, Beyond Belief. A couple of things I'm going to do. Shadows, and these are going to be the old shadows, 1, and water alpha 0.5. This was not set before. So when you would open, and Fitzquake or Quick Spasm for whatever reason doesn't do this, I'm sure somebody could immediately tell me why that is. This is actually how, if I knew how to write play demo, this is actually how the game would present itself, right? So just like in normal Doom, normal Quake, I would have some free demos actually in there showing off the maps. This is Be Belief 4. There's going to be one from, I don't actually know what the next one is. I know the last one is Be Belief 6. But so I figured, you know, if you started this, you shouldn't even notice that this was not stock Quake. And it really feels like you're in this slightly alternate universe where you just downloaded Quake shareware, and you know, it just looks slightly different, and yay, here are new levels. That's freaking awesome. Now a lot of it, again, I mentioned this during the Doom stream a little bit, was just like personal ambitions, right, or a certain standard that I wanted to hold myself to, because I figure like if these levels are going to be as good as Tim Willett's and just id Software's levels in general, Romero made the first level, of course, then that is something that if I can aspire to that, BBLA 5 is actually the next one. That's something I can aspire to and people don't even notice it. Then I have actually created something that was, you know, worthy of consideration, that people actually want to play. None of Beyond Belief was actually created with this idea that I could get hired for it. That was never in my mind, because honestly, for the longest time, it did not actually occur to me. I saw all of my friends on the IRC channels getting hired, but I was in Germany, and I just thought there's no way that that didn't really enter my mind frame. Whatever, I had this mental block where I realized for quite a while, did not realize that, you know what, this might actually lead to something. This was purely created out of ambitions to create something that was cool and that was on the same level as, you know, what id Software had created. So let's get started and let's actually look at Beyond Belief in what GL Quake looked like at that point. Probably a little bit higher resolution, but generally pretty much the same look. I actually think this looks pretty cool. So this is my own start map. It's actually quite a bit of work that went into just making a start map, if you really think about it, but I just thought it was worth it. It was necessary. You can see a platform up there. I wonder where that leads. You guys probably all know. I modified the Beyond, like the Quake textures, to actually spell out Beyond Belief, created a cool dome, and I just wanted to make a great entrance, right? And like really create something that would make people go, wow, I'm glad I downloaded this. Because something that might not be obvious, I'm just going to walk around here a little bit. You can see easy, medium, and hard while I talk about stuff. Something that might not be obvious to people is that this was 7 megabytes as a download. I don't think I can make this jump, by the way. Oh, here I go. For whatever reason, I couldn't make this jump earlier in Quake. This was a 7 megabyte download, and there were actually 2 versions of Beyond Belief you could download. You don't have it these days anymore. There's just one bbelief.zip file. But back then, there was actually a split version, because a lot of people are using dial-up modems to download all of this stuff, and I had to make sure that people could actually download it. So there was a version which I think was 3 parts or so. I don't know exactly how many parts. And then there was like a splitter, and then you could actually join these into one big zip file and then join it afterwards. But so somebody investing a lot of maybe valuable even time, like time on their modem, and you know it might actually cost them a little bit to download this. I wanted to make sure they actually felt like, hey, this was cool. So as we go and we switch, we choose our difficulty. You can see my initial ambitions, right? And this slipgate leads to the original levels of Quake, yes, because when I originally made this, I wanted to make BBelief 2 as well, and I just realized I wouldn't have time for it. But so here's a really cool, I feel, episode select, and you could go back to the normal Quake levels, or you could actually go to Beyond Belief. So it's kind of pointless actually what you see there, but once again it feels like, you know, I think it's all, it was supposed to scream quality, and I think it has a certain, it achieves that. Now we're looking at Quake level design in the state of the art of 1996 and 1997, right? If we really apply modern aesthetics and modern expectations to this and what the Quake editing community is doing today, no, I mean this might not quite be on that standard anymore, but I think for back then this was really like up to par with that. So let's see, and actually go through the secret entrance. So of course there's a nightmare setting as well, and you could kind of see it from up there. Like this was me, because you don't have a map in here, kind of playing with your perception and spatial map that you're creating out of that you're pretty much building in your head. So here's Nightmare, and I wanted to make sure at this point rocket jumping actually had been established pretty well. So I wanted to make sure that I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek here, giving you the rocket launcher to say, you know what, if you want to do Nightmare, well then make sure you actually know how to rocket jump, because otherwise Nightmare probably is not for you. And I actually seen speedruns of this where people are talking back at me, right? This is the level designer again talking to you and saying, hey, think you're tough enough for Nightmare? And then somebody like puts on, oh yeah. And there's a whole bunch of people like pretty much talking back at me, which is kind of cool. So you would rocket jump in here, and I'm a terrible rocket jumper. Was back then, certainly am now. Oh my god, see, this is how you embarrass yourself while streaming. Not even gonna go through here right now. Well, actually, fuck it. I'm gonna just redo this real quick. But I was never a good rocket jumper, and certainly after not playing Quake too much, yeah. In fact, what's probably gonna happen now, I'm gonna fall into this lava a few more times, and Nah, at least I can still do this. But yeah, gives you an idea of my skills. I think I was a decent deathmatcher, and you know, back then I was certainly better than now, but there were always people, especially in Quake, who would be better than me. Okay, so you know what to do here. Oh yes. So no, I cannot do this. Here we go. And then you would go through here, you would get your health back, get exactly 101, and that would count back down. No, we're not actually going to play this in Nightmare, right? We are going to play it in Hard, but we're not going to play it in Nightmare, but I just wanted to show you. If you didn't already know, it happened. So back then I put a lot of thought into making sure that this was round exactly along the lines of the texture, that I had interesting kind of ceiling, that the lighting, which of course was the biggest thing, you know, that id Software really added, and something that you as a level designer, you know, tried to use, or you know, were excited to use, that I had some decent lighting in here with light coming through bars and so on. So those were all things that hopefully are just pretty consistent for all of the maps in Beyond Belief. I want to say that I made this start map pretty late, at a point when I actually knew Quake mapping pretty well. I don't generally have a good recollection of which maps I made sooner or later, even less so than for my Doom episodes. But yeah, I feel like this is pretty much the detail level you're gonna get through all of Beyond Belief, and I think it was perfectly up to par, you know, up to snuff with what id Software had created right there. So let's get started. This, of course, is We Believe number 1. All of Quake episodes start with a tech kind of theme, right? So I had to start with one of these bases as well. I feel like this base has a slightly different feel than what you had in Quake, because a lot of those maps were kind of sprawling, kind of linear, long, drawn-out Quake maps that John Romero made. This one was supposed to be a little bit like more integrated. It might have been at that point influenced by what Hypnotic Ritual had done for Armagon as well. But yeah, so as you're coming in here, this is pretty much this is my Quake base, my Quake base map kind of thing, easing you into the world of Beyond Belief. Secret out there, bunch of guys up there. Actually is and this is not advertised very well at all, the gold keycard is down there, but you wouldn't necessarily know that. So as I'm guiding you along with these arrows, you might actually have missed that. So I guess I try to have a little bit of a theme in here, just purely in, you know, it's like a reservoir kind of thing. These kind of buttons tell you a little bit about the purpose of this place. It's still a very abstract kind of way of actually building levels, of course, but you know, it was supposed to have a little bit of a sense of purpose. There actually is a way to jump over here if you're good. However, I'm not sure I really agree with that, with my past self, as to how I did this. There actually is a clip brush in here. There actually is invisible collision here. So if you try to jump there, you collide with something that you can't quite fathom, that keeps you from actually jumping out there. I don't think that's really great level design, but hey, that's how I ultimately set this up. And, you know, I'm stuck with it now. So, custom sign I made for the security control, authorized staff only. So the idea is that you need to actually turn off. Well, this is where the security controls actually reside, and you'll use that to turn something off. And then as we go through here, pretty straightforward. You were very restricted with what the kind of gameplay you could do with these kind of tech maps in Quake, because you only have 2 or 3 enemy types really, at least nominally, unless you want to put a whole bunch of like Cthulhian enemies in here from the actual like medieval kind of tech levels. And you know, I think I figured out a good way, we figured out a good way together with Dennis of how to actually do that in the next map, I feel. But certainly here you only had 1 or 2 enemy types, and in fact so there's no differentiation here as well, right? And the actual shooting is much less interesting, way less interesting than what you had in Doom as well. If you play this on skill level 3, like, I think it's 3, well, just normal difficulty, by the way. You don't even get these enforcer types, the guys who are shooting at you with laser guns, and you didn't get that in the shareware Quake episode either, right? So there's even one less enemy type in here, and because of it, like, there's even less differentiation, and the gameplay just isn't all that interesting as you're playing this. But hey, that's just what we had, that's what we were stuck with. So, translucent water was huge for me. So GL Quake had come out. I love translucent water. I love aquariums and just anything like fish and anything that's underwater. I've been a fisherman, like an angler. Well, I guess that's even an American word, an English word, for all of my life, certainly back then. And I just love this idea that you could look through the water and that you could even see fish swimming under the water and so on. So I made this decision, and I think this was one of the first mission packs where you could actually like use this to fully support the translucent water theme that GL Quake created, using a specific QBSP utility that somebody had compiled, so that water would actually not be a vis blocker and you could actually see through it. Because of course if you tried to do this back then with the stock Quake maps, you got translucent water, but you would just get a hall of mirrors underneath because they were not compiled for this, and all of the vis information would not actually work correctly. None of these serial numbers for the gates and so on have any meaning, by the way. I really just made those up. There's no hidden like house numbers or birth dates or anything like that in there. But so for this one, I made, for Beyond Belief, I made the conscious decision to fully support it and make sure that that's what I hate about using the quad damage, that you can actually lose ammo if you jib people, because by jibbing people you don't get a dropped backpack. But so I only had one version, which made everything a little bit slower if you didn't actually have GL Quake, but it wasn't that bad. And I just loved it. I mean, I love that feature. There's a big section of this devoted to it, devoted in the README file, in the doc file. And yeah, I hope people get a kick out of it, because to me it was just one of those really cool things. So here we have found the secret. We actually just swam under the golden key door. Like, the connectivity and being able to do it in 3D and so on was always big for me, and I tried to support it wherever possible. Actually just sidestepped, in a way, a bunch of combat, which was somewhat intentional. I was aware of it, because I did not go back this way. Well, I did not actually fully... That's not true. Did not sidestep it per se. I just have to go all the way back here. Which now gives me access over here. Again, somewhat anonymous, right? Like all of these doors, all of these switches, at least there's messages this time around, but you pretty much have to run up to something and then it's going to tell you if something opens or doesn't open. The affordance on this still isn't great, but hey, you know, at least the level progression is somewhat clear. We look right here, and we look right here. Wait a second. This monitor, which you can actually see carved out as a separate brush, is moving. Let's shoot it. Let's see what happens. Well, look at that. We find our double-barreled shotgun way earlier. Now again, a double-barreled shotgun, I feel like, as a differentiation and as weapon design, was not nearly as differentiated in this game as it was in Doom. In Doom, you would constantly switch between a single-barreled shotgun and a double-barreled shotgun to attack certain guys, preserve ammo, and so on. But that just didn't really come to pass, I feel like, in Quake. So again, like, purely on a like core gameplay level, not to diss it, right? It was an awesome game in many ways, but I feel that just the core combat and that core gameplay loop just wasn't nearly as successful in here. One other thing that I realized is that these enforcers were dropping energy cells, right? Which are used by the lightning gun. And they dropped 5 of them, which was a real problem, because I'm giving you the lightning gun very early in this pack. You get it in level 3, and I realized you had tons and tons of lightning ammo, so I actually took that down to 2 to balance everything out a little bit more. Okay, so now that we have the gold key, if I would have remembered, you know, if I'd been down here before, we can actually go through the gold door. Have guys, German Shepherds, I guess, or whatever they are. I think they're like Pinscher, they're Dobermans, right? I think that's what they really must be. attacking me kind of out of nowhere, but I'm just assuming that they're guard dogs or something for this facility, because here you have two guys clearly reading out computer screens and being completely preoccupied with it, so that they didn't even notice the firefight. But you know, you try to do a little bit of this kind of visual storytelling. I didn't really get into trying to create really realistic, like non-dungeon like environments until I started working on Quake. Working on Sin afterwards, and actually is a map that I can show you that served as my application for Retro. But yeah, so you know, these are the kind of token efforts I made. So there's always this ambition, there certainly has always been my ambition, to create level gating mechanisms that do not simply rely on somewhat cheap or somewhat one-note key doors. Only so many times you can do that, right? And this was one of them. Now, I don't think this is as clear, because if I just run through this, I'm not even going to run into it. This is supposed to be an energy gate, right? And yes, it's going to keep me from going through, and I think it has pretty good affordance in that. It's pretty clear, like the feedback here is that you probably don't want to go through it because you're going to die, and if you're going to try it, you're probably going to die too. That's not entirely true actually. Speedrunners just routinely just run through this without getting killed. But generally, for the normal player, you know, and for me back then, this very much certainly was the case. So, I think I could have done a better job though, because there's a trigger here that I think triggers way too late. I'm pretty much already on my way in there. And the trigger should have started somewhere here and show this as a security gate, right? Just as importantly, I don't think it would have been that difficult to create some sort of warning stripe, as you have, like one of these industrial yellow and black warning stripes, and put it down here. That wouldn't have been a big deal, and it would have just like communicated to a player much more that a lot of people probably went into here and died once and then had to come back. Now it does say here, to be fair, that the security systems are active. I get that, but even so, do you know this is a security system? I am not entirely convinced. So the actual level progression, of course, is this way, but the idea here was that you can actually even see the ending there, and you get like a little bit of a sneak peek into the rest of the level, and there's a little bit of just foreshadowing going on wherever you are, while you're taking a you kind of sidetrack, and you kind of keep tracking back onto this level again and again. So let's see, kill these guys up there. Of course, one of the big things was that you could pit people on these kind of platforms in stock Quake. I don't know how many people remember this. Looking straight up was not actually possible. You were kind of gated somewhere here. This is something that was fixed in Quake 2, for example. And obviously in Fitz Quake and Quake Specimen and so on, you can do it today, but back then you could only look up about this far. And because it was still new, like you actually had to enable +M look initially, right? A lot of people might not even have used mouse look, so that was still a consideration for this as well. This is me creating with Chiton lighting spark wire. That's the best I could do. Obviously there's no, like, actually there's no placeable, I believe, like particle effects here. So this is me just creating a sparking wire, exposed wire there. You can actually see there's a separate brush at the very end that shows how the wire is exposed. I've already killed everybody here. We've kind of circled back. I lost, and I had no idea. Did this happen in stock Quake? It must have. I lost all this ammo here. I was pretty sure all of these guys' backpacks would actually have stayed around, but I guess they didn't. But so here we're back, and there's a couple of things going on here. For one, you know, now I can backtrack, and I actually have a clear goal from the silver key straight to where I want to go here, except that a lot of people did not actually notice the silver key here at all. It is blue on blue, it is very high up, and I know a bunch of people actually got stuck here and did not realize this. And that, I think, as a level design lesson would have been easier to do, and I could have put that a little bit lower. Let's pick it up now, because we know it's here. One thing that I never actually used in Quake, and I think would have been interesting, is to put multiple key doors in there, where you constantly alternate between finding keys and losing them, because, you know, using one of these keys actually loses them for you. I don't have these gold key anymore. Before I go down there, I'm gonna do this, and I don't know how many people found this secret. I thought it was a cool secret, because, you know, like, I'm just, as soon as I'm up there, I'm like, I'm gonna go, can I make this jump? And you know what, if you actually ask yourself that, you're gonna get rewarded with one of the secrets here, and you're gonna get some armor out of it, because I figured if you're gonna put that much thought into you know, exploration into the way you play in the game, you should be rewarded. So here we have more people reading out consoles. Now I feel that we had a little bit of gameplay going on there at least. If you remember from my Doom streams, and if not, I'm not going to go through all of it again, you'll probably have to read it up, but I'm talking a lot about prioritization choice and how good gameplay actually works, and how you're constantly doing improvisational play, and you're constantly forming a plan, trying to execute on it, then having to reevaluate. And that happened a little bit as I was going in here. I'm shooting at one of those guys in the background. One of the enforcers is actually walking into the scene. I have to reprioritize because he has more importance and priority to me than those guys, so I actually prioritize him now. So that happened there, just a tiny bit, but let's be honest, it just didn't happen enough in Quake. So, and it wouldn't have happened at all at a lower difficulty. So yeah, security systems disabled. So let's see what that means for us. For one, once again, complete connectivity here. I like that, like slowly unlocking the key, unlocking the map. Of course, it kind of was murder on my R speeds because all of these were just entities, and you know that this would render so much more. But like back then, today we're not really worried about it. But it was important, and I fought pretty hard to make sure something like that was actually, all that connectivity was purely present. And here we go, giving you, if you explore just a little bit more, your nail gun for the first time. I'm not sure that's really a tech weapon so much as a very like medieval kind of weapon, so I'm not sure it fits here, but I figured just as a progression it was good. Now, this is something that is going to break on you in a whole bunch of Doom ports. Quake ports, sorry. Either the weapon would not fall down, it would be stuck up there, or you would actually, it would just disappear or fall out of the world and so on. Like a lot of my levels back then did not have perfect like item placement, and a lot of, you know, like the Quake engine, because that was my only measuring, like did not complain, and whenever I played it all of the items would be there, but a lot of, like there were actually a lot of mistakes in here and a lot of entities falling out of the world. So a lot of these modern Quake ports actually try to fix stuff but then break this episode, and there are various ways in which you can fix that. Like Neki, for example, helped me figure out a couple of ways in which well, I still think even now in dark places this weapon still wouldn't show up. There's a grenade launcher in believe 4 that doesn't show up unless you set a certain flag. The rocket launcher to use the nightmare difficulty in the start level would not show up. There's a whole bunch of things like that which just you have to be aware of if you try to play this in a modern port. That is certainly where something like Fitzquake / Quake Spasm serves you well, because it is pretty faithful to the original Doom. So now this is turned off. Yes, it is. You can actually see this is not blinking anymore. Now, would you actually notice if I didn't tell you? Maybe not necessarily, but this was us in circa 96 and 97 coming up with ways to create level progressions. I still don't like how when you're actually jibbing people, if you play this in dark places, for example, these entities are actually hanging in the air because they don't fall to the ground correctly. But yeah, all of these entities like sludge barrels, which you don't have, just these explosive expo boxes, for example. It's all something that I think in Doom, once again, as a gameplay element, just worked much better, because you just had them more, there was more interaction systemically on the core gameplay loops to where you could actually use them all the time. Here they only happen in the tech levels and not that much really, so I have them in here and you can actually use them. You jib somebody and you're actually getting punished because now you're not getting his ammo and so on. It's just a little bit fishy, right? Now this is a secret here because there's a brush in here that's actually blinking, as you can see, and we're going to use this just to make sure we can make it through this sludge area right here. And this is the level designer talking to you. It's pretty terrible actually. What's happening here pretty much is you're gonna go in here and it should be possible, in fact it might happen pretty easily, that you're blowing this up and accidentally blow yourself up. And the only way I felt I could deal with that as a level designer is to actually talk to him directly and tell him that, hey, or tell the player that, hey, be careful, because you might blow yourself up. Not exactly good level design, not exactly a good relationship between what I believe the relationship between player and level designer should be. But hey, we were young, we were foolish, and we needed the money, so this is ultimately how I did it. And now we're done with the first level. I still like it. I think it has a nice like internal connectivity. I like the kind of detail you have in here. Just little things like, you know, all of these bars and light fixtures just going down a little bit, adding visual interest either on the floor, on the ceiling, and so on. You know, again, like just based on the mapping standards of 97. Not unnecessarily today, or what you might do even in a mod today, but you know, certainly for what it was back then, it creates a certain aesthetic. So with that, we are done, and we're about to leave. This was not like a normal slipgate, so I figured I had to tell you that you might don't screw yourself, because this is the exit. We are in fact done here, and we found all secrets. I think I'm gonna have an easier time finding all my secrets in this than in my old Doom levels, and we killed everybody as well. Good job, us. Alright, so I'm gonna go to the next map, gonna look at what's on the stream real quick, see what people are saying. Just again, by the way, I'm not sure if I ever officially thanked all of you people today for showing up. I think there's a lot of people on the stream. I kind of have to lean forward to like switch this over, but yeah, it's pretty awesome to see everybody. And I'm assuming almost everybody on the stream still plays Quake, keeps it alive, which I think is really good. So let me go through the chat here real quick and see what's in here. If there's anything I should talk about. Lift music. Okay, so where were we? Screen lags a bit, or is it a demo? R3 to Retro Gamer XH or XH says there's music. I actually had to, for this stream, find my old Quake soundtrack and copy the MP3 files so I could actually have music. I wanted to make sure I had music for this. Nobody ever plays Quake with music, right? Like back then it was on the CD, so you had to have the CD in the in your drive. And you pretty much never had that, so almost nobody played Quake with music. I had to make an effort here as well, but I figured it was important to just kind of give us this idea that give us an idea of what the aesthetics were. And I actually set music tracks for all of this. Swiffle, are you going to get back into Quake mapping and do an actual Beyond Belief too? Because that would be neat. I don't think so. I mean, I just don't have time now. I'm a full-time dad, actually, full-time husband, as well as full-time professional game designer and level designer, so I don't really have the time for this. I did, however, make Quake Beyond Belief 2008, which we're going to look at probably tomorrow, where in 2008, all the way to 2013 or so, like in Odyssey, I actually went back and I made another Quake map. But that's probably about as far as we're going to get to it. And when we get to Beyond Belief 2008, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Rottweiler. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of like in-jokes and so on that I don't actually quite notice. The German word, you would say Rottweiler, by the way. It's not Rottweiler, Rottweiler. And I am the German. I don't think I actually have a good fake German accent. I just have the actual German accent that I have. That is just the way it is. Not much you can do about it. You're kind of stuck with it. You kind of have to usually, yeah. If you live with me for a while, you'll actually notice, or you kind of get used to it. I'm noticing that my green screen, once again, is just a little bit out of whack today. I'm having a little bit of a hard time, so I'm going to see if I can fix that in the background here. Let me check that real quick, because, yeah, unfortunately, it's just something that I hate getting hung up on this kind of stuff. I hate myself because it shouldn't be that important. It kind of destroys the magic, but you know what? It's kind of important to me, so I'm going to play with these settings until we have something that doesn't annoy the hell out of me. I think that's as good as it's going to get now. Let's not get too hung up on this. Let's see what else we have here. Jib sound, so much media. People are wondering if it's jib or gib. I say both. You know, I don't think GIF, like the file format, should actually be called GIF. It's GIB, because, you know, it's GIF and a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, I'm not really going to get into a religious religious argument over it. I'm pretty sure John Romero says GIB, so, you know, that's how we would that's how we could talk about it. Or that's what we could use as the definitive source right here. If you want to, backpacks are timed, TD Dash says. That might be entirely true. So that's why I didn't get backpacks when I was all the way on the top. Coding is just mapping with numbers. TD Dash says, yeah, kind of, not really. I'm not really going to get into that. Steve Walker asks what I'm playing. I'm playing Quake Spasm. Yes, I will play Dark Places at some point, because I think there's something in there. But yes. Cool. Anything else in here? 2008 was so cool. So there's I'm going to give you a link when we look at Beyond Belief 2008. I think it's cool in many ways. I could clip the webcam. You're entirely correct. Eat at me. DVE says, but you know what, I think it's okay right now, so we're gonna stick with what we have. Other argument is whether fiends have eyes or not. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into that. Okay. Dopex82, hi Matthias, you ever worked with some of the IT guys? I grew up with Doom and Quake. Did I ever work with any of them? No, so I said earlier that I actually worked with John Fitzgibbons, who made Fitzquake. I worked with him on Dead Space 2. I don't think I ever worked with anybody who actually worked at it. I have a bunch of industry friends. I interviewed people who worked on Doom 4, for example, and those kind of things. And I'm sure there's some sort of weird connection where somebody actually was at it at some point, but not immediately where I'm like thinking, oh my god, yes. Work with a whole bunch of other people from the general industry, of course. If you're looking at my Doom stream, for example, talking about a lot of these Doom level designers who ended up in the industry. But yeah, not necessarily Quake guys immediately. Hear that coding is not mapping with numbers. Eat it. Yeah, I'm not. I think it's interesting. I think it is a very different skill set. And now we also have to talk about whether we're talking about actual programming, we're talking about scripting, we're talking about working really like low at the hardware level, or we're talking about something that's higher. Because I feel like as a really good C and C++ coder, or, you know, even assembly coder, you really know what a computer is, what a CPU register set are, what a ALU is, what an MMU is, and what a compiler actually does when it translates your high-level code into low-level machine opcodes and all of that kind of stuff. That's why I feel it's very different. It's very highly technical. And you know what you're writing in long form when you're programming, you're always aware of memory management. You're always transforming data, right? And you're always aware of what's actually going on at the low level on the actual machine. I think Quake mapping is somewhat similar, purely in that you're actually putting things into a text file, which is then interpreted by a compiler and actually turned into a map file, an executable, and you know, so there actually is a translation going on there as well. But I feel, you know, and I know you guys weren't serious really on the stream anyway, but I think that's where, like, then it becomes much more of a much more of an artistic kind of way. Anyway, that's just me. Let's go and actually play something, because I know you guys were joking, but this is actually, yeah. Let's play a little bit more here. So this is level 2, the cleanse. Let's play it just a little bit. This was the map that Panzer, Dennis Möller of the Innocent Crew actually started, and then I completed. This has a base theme as well. I actually wanted to create a somewhat graceful way to transition, not just creating a slip gate and then going into medieval levels now, but actually going into like making more of a transition, and that's really the puzzle piece that Panzer, Dennis, provided for me. So there's a little bit of it's not here actually. Why am I looking at this? It's over here. There's like some pieces to this puzzle over here. Yes, I'm using this button, for example. Welcome to DNB. I have no idea what this means. Timecode. I don't know what timecode is. Just completely random. Build status of base 52% only. Question running at normal speed. I guess this is a little bit like the Death Star. And reported anomalies. Discovered unauthorized slipgate disposal in one of the caves. This probably goes by so fast that most people weren't even able to read it. But I was trying to actually create this there's fiction behind it, right? And let's actually look at the fiction. So this is a half-finished base. Yeah, right there actually had a little bit of prioritization going on, you know, because the Enforcer was more dangerous than the Rottweiler, but yeah, not a lot of it happens. So here we have the cave, and they're building this base into the cave. And we can actually see as we're going forward, well, there's a little bit of foreshadowing here as well, again, which I like. Trying to get a little bit of that Doom kind of, you know, like distance warfare going in here. But yeah, this is where we have this kind of, I'm assuming it's a research base or something like that, built into the mountain. And you can actually see it slowly here of how the map and the tech theme transitions into the cave theme, which is something that Dennis had come up with, which I thought was really, really clever. And so I completely ran with it. Here, this was just huge for me. Like, being able to see fish, swordfish, under the water, I just love that. This was just one of those moments where, like, oh my god, we have arrived. Like we can now create 3D environments where we can look into water and there's actual wildlife in the water, and I just loved it in the first place because I love fish and I love fishing and so on, so I just love that kind of stuff. I'm going to play through it the kind of correct way. I obviously could have jumped into the water here and then backtracked. I'm going to play it this way around. So these are all my sections. I'm actually not going to talk too much about exactly what my sections are. I'm going to show you at some point what my sections were over somebody else. But yeah, this was like that water. It just killed me, man. It killed me. I can't overstate how much I loved fish in the water. I don't really feel like I have to preserve ammo. Like I feel in Doom, I had a much more. I was much more aware of. I don't even remember. Was this a secret? Probably not. I had much more awareness of how much ammo I had, and I constantly switched. Right here, I feel like I always have enough ammo, so I don't really feel as compelled to switch between single and multi-shotgun. Yeah. So here again, we see this kind of just using Quake textures, this kind of transition. You know, even just going from pristine kind of tech panels to more dirty tech panels, which I'm assuming haven't been fully polished up yet. Exposed wires at this point, and now actually going into where they were building, I'm assuming. I think that's pretty cool. So here we have this cave system. You'll never know who actually put up this cave system. I'm assuming the lights were added by the company. And what's this guy doing? So this is the first ogre we actually see in Beyond Belief, giving us a little bit of a like foreshadowing. There's a actual cave-in over here. There actually is a way to get up here, like I think speedrunners have been able to get up here, see? But that was not the intent, so we'll ignore that. And here, yeah. So we will actually go down here and jump into the water and get back to jump around. One of the ways, one of the little just additions, because I had a custom proc.dat for this, right, where I added mostly for the end enemy, like for Chiton in the end, I compiled my own proc.dat anyway. So one of the things I added was the ability to jib fish, which came from the Hypnotic pack, just because I thought that was just so much more satisfying. So this might be one of the worst or most well-hidden keys in the history of base building. I think a lot of people ultimately found it, but I'm not sure. It's a little bit iffy. Okay, so we have this key. Let's go back, and we actually have to run all the way back to. If I jumped into the water, of course, I'd be completely backtracking to this entire area right here, which is kind of cool to me. This is kind of an annoying elevator, by the way. I want to say this is a secret, and I'm not sure what this button did, but I don't even remember, and it's probably not true. But so you would have completely backtracked to all of this, which would have been cool. I'm not sure why I didn't make that other one a button lift as well. So wait a second, this is the gold door. So where, ladies and gentlemen, actually is the silver door would be the question. Now I actually remember now, I think. So it's right over here, but you know, these are all the little peculiarities of actually playing games back then, and I actually just got caught by it. I only remember one of Like, this door had not at all called itself out to me. There's no map in here. It's kind of hard to remember where they might be. So it might have taken people a little bit of time. I remember building this, and it took forever to do this. It took forever to actually build. I think this, in fact, was the impetus for me to buy more RAM. So one of the stories behind all of this, you know, that I touched on earlier, and I talked about how I would always try to partition maps so I wouldn't have to BSP and viz the entire map, was that computer cycles were really expensive back then. They only had a Pentium 90 or so, and it took forever to QBSP and specifically viz these things. So I think this area right here and recompiling this map right here was the point where I actually bought more RAM. I only had 32 megabytes of RAM at that point, and I figured maybe, and it took forever, and in fact I think a whole bunch of versions of QBSP would crash on me, and so I thought maybe more RAM is actually going to help me with that, which was not the case. But I actually went out and I spent about 500 or 600 German marks on buying more RAM, like buying 64 megabytes of additional RAM that I could actually use to QBSP a whole bunch of these maps. And that was kind of my investment into QBSP, so to speak, in that and you know, it was a little bit of a black art. I didn't quite know it didn't even help, but yeah, that's how. Okay, so I don't even remember exactly how to do this. How do I go up there? I have to first open the door and then stand on it, I believe. Or this opens just by itself. And then this opens for me. But yeah, and then I just had BSP times that took forever. Like some of these maps, I think this one took a day and a half or so to actually fully BSP and compile. And you know, so I'd have it running overnight for long times. And I kind of had to BSP a whole bunch of this stuff because just playing it without viz, so I had to viz it, because playing this without viz was just so slow in many ways that I could not even like accurately assess the gameplay for this. So there was this constant back and forth, and this was certainly painful, much more so than ever making Doom maps, for example, to actually get to finished maps. At some point I even had one of my clan colleagues, that's why I'm actually thanking, we didn't really look into the thank you section, maybe I should go back to it in the document, but Sputnik, like Udo Kempen, one of my clan friends back then, who had a internet company, actually gave me remote access to one of his Solaris servers, where I could upload my maps and BSP them in the background while I was doing other stuff, because remember this? Because that was the only way for me to really like get a lot of these maps compiled. I think this hallway was very much inspired by Hypnotic's pack. I'm not sure why, it just kind of has that feeling of that kind of tech hallways that they created. Alright, so what does that do? Well, we know what it does. I thought it also spawned some guys, I guess it did not. But we have just created a way for us, for ourselves. Okay, so there they go. Now they spawn in. There's an actual gameplay moment here, to a degree. And there was a little bit of the weapon differentiation that I liked so much in Doom, and that I usually used the nail gun for these wizards, scrags, whatever we call them. But you know, it just didn't exist as much. Oops. Did not mean to do that. It's because I'm using the F button instead of the number buttons. That's probably not good. And okay, so I would like to think that this guy in stock Quake would actually have fallen to the ground and would have been able to be more effective. In general, though, this right here is the setup in which ogres were the most successful, right, in all of Quake. You put them high up, you have all of those grenades tumble down, and then you have the player play with it or dodge grenades while also trying to shoot people. You can do it in these kind of setups as well, but purely, you know, like this right here is actually pretty powerful. But you're putting them a little bit more as a disadvantage, which is cool. So this is one of the few, I feel, enemies that you could actually play with, and as a level designer, I actually had some like leeway to create some cool and interesting gameplay with. Now, as I said earlier that just as I said earlier that I never really worried about ammo. Of course, now I'm running out of ammo left and right, which I think all of these maps, you know, I had some playtesters, but ultimately it was mostly just me. So all of these maps were just mostly me playtesting and kind of tweaking it based on my skill level as a player. So we are going to do an official save here, right here. And this is the end of Be Believe 2. I really like it. I think it's somewhat unique. I think it has some unique elements to it. I really like this transition between tech and the slow easing into the medieval theme of this, which I cannot really claim credit for, because all of that was Dennis's work. And I figured, because I give people credit and I've never shown this, I might actually give you a much better idea of where somebody's work ended and somebody's work started. So I'm going to show you now what this map actually looked like when I got it from Dennis. And you'll see that for this map I most certainly did a lot of work. Fulbright 1 I think might actually be good right here, if I can spell it. So this was the map that Dennis had started, and you know, like, he was an incredibly accomplished Doom level designer and an incredibly accomplished, just generally, you know, like programmer and level designer and so on. He just didn't really, Quake editing never really clicked with him. So he started making, he made mini.bsp, one map, and then he clear one, somebody says in the background, which does not work for me. Or maybe it doesn't work here, it's fine anyway. So this is the map that he had created, and let's go actually back into like lid view. And so he started working on a map. He was going to finish it. For whatever reason, he didn't like doing it, he was running out of time, he had other things in life and so on. He just wasn't interested in finishing this map. So this was the cleanse, the way it looked like when I got it. So you see there's the key area up here. He created these really cool doors, like these vertical doors, which I liked. He created this area down here. Didn't finish anything onto this side. So what we did have was this lift right here that we just looked at, into this area up here. It's really just this area right here. There's no side area and so on. And then he started creating this cave system. And again, like, it's hard to see. There's nothing up here yet. He had the water down here. He had this area where you now find the silver key. And then he had the starting of the cave system, and he had this cool transition between tech and medieval built into the mountain. So all of that was him. But then, as he came up here, he had just the beginnings of this cave system. This is, of course, like if you remember, this is where we have the cave-in that we just looked at, and this is where we jump up, or we don't jump up, but we could theoretically jump up and go to the slip gate. The slip gate is right behind here. But yeah, none of that had been built yet. So this is where I started. This is where I added all of my stuff. You can see how this is where then I'm connecting you back into, you know, I create this entire connecting area and went back into what my part of this map was. And then of course I did a whole bunch of cleanup and did things with lights and so on. But yeah, that's what it looked like, and gives you an idea of, I think this would have been an incredibly cool map if Dennis had finished it, right? It's not like I made it better so much as I just finished it. But yeah, that's his contribution, and you know, it was a really good start. So that was Beyond Belief number 2. Let's finish this map. Two out of 3 secrets, because I'm pretty sure there's actually a secret in this room that I did not get. You see, like, there's a door behind there that you can actually, I think you can actually raise that up. There's something like that, but I didn't remember exactly how to do it while I was playing. Okay, so let's keep going, and let's go to Beyond Belief 3, but not before I just look at the stream real quick. Okay, so let's see what we see back here. Okay, so let's start when I was ranting about programming. I think we may have tweeted your channel. Yeah, yeah, he was on the channel when I was playing Doom last time. Like as I said on that as well, like John Romero is an incredibly awesome guy to just talk to. Like not at all presumptuous. If you ever run into him at an industry party or so on, he has a great lot of insight into all of this. Surfel says this map confused the hell out of him or her. I'm not going to make assumptions there. When he or she played it as a kid, which I think is not really cool. Bad level designer, but Sleepwalker says, I can't even remember playing We Believe, but I played it rather late, not way back when it was released. I like the fact that people are still finding it today, or anybody who's kind of going into classical Doom, you know, is still, like, actually discovers it and is still having fun with it. There's a Quake 1 message thread where people are talking about favorite old Doom or Quake levels, and somebody said, like, his dad installed it for him when he was 8 or so, and that's really what he remembers about playing Quake more than anything, because he liked playing this so much, which is awesome to me. I played Warp Spasm first. You know, between this and then of course you had the official mission packs, you had Zerstörer. I did work with somebody who worked on Zerstörer, which is the only official way of saying it, by the way. It's a German word, it's Zerstörer. But, you know, like I worked on somebody who is from America and would have said, I worked on Zerstörer. Which is Scott Dalton, who was at Legend, worked with me on Wheel of Time, Unreal 2, and has been at Valve ever since. Was a level designer, is a programmer now, is doing particle systems and so on, and he was one of the main guys working Zerstörer. So between that and a bunch of other, you know, the max levels and so on, but I think this was one of the Quake episodes that people remember, which I think is really cool. Fish type, loved fishing with shotguns, shooting fish in a barrel, in a way. Remember that mod where you could play the maps as a Quake monster? I would have played as a fish. Yeah, I guess so. Let's see what else is in here. Actually, I'm running really late because I've looked at so much stuff. And we have an entire stream tomorrow as well, right? Where we're going to start at noon again and we're going to look at all of Beyond Belief, including 2008. So I'm going to try to hurry it up a little bit here. I think I had a P90. In 95, or I had a P133 maybe, something like that, but that must have been like in 95 or so. I had a DX2, a 486 DX2 66 that was playing all of Quake on initially and Doom on. Then I upgraded. And then of course once you did get a Voodoo card, everything was awesome. Okay, so yes, the Reaver and the TNT came after the Voodoo. There's a whole bunch of stories. I can talk about that when we are actually looking at Wheel of Time, just in how NVIDIA, who are of course the kings right now of GPUs, but you know, they're slow. They had a very slow entry into the 3D graphics card market. Okay, so let's play Beyond Belief 3. All of these maps, by the way, we haven't really looked at them. Another fine mess, and a lot of these are inspired by heavy metal songs. Welcome to Dying is Blind Guardian, for example. There's a whole bunch of these kind of things. Another fine mess, I'm pretty sure, is a Skyclad song. I'd have to remember. So this was a map that Andreas Fink started, and I can actually show you what this map looked like when I got it after this as well. But first, I'm going to take some time to just play through it, and I think this pretty much is, to me, this became my quintessential shot of Beyond Belief, right? This is still the one that I keep tweeting all the time to kind of remind people that I'm doing Beyond Belief, because I put so much work into this and I love this area so much, just like this little house I made here, which by the way was immediately, like, if you want to get a general idea as to what the restrictions were when you were making Quake maps back then, this right here was about as much as you could do before your art speeds were too high and people were not running at frame rate anymore. Like this area right here with the two areas, because there's a second one back here where you can actually see the exit gate, of course. And then just the way that I built the house, because it has a lot of exposed little like frames and rims and that kind of stuff, were pretty much pushing you to the brink, of what would push Quake really to the brink, and were about as much as you could afford back then. And of course, I'm screwing myself because I don't get any of this ammo, right? But I like going down here and just looking at the progression. I ultimately released this gate, by the way, like just the brushes for it, because I took a lot of pride into making sure this gate was cut out perfectly, including that little nip down there where the skull is coming down, because a lot of level designers, including some of the IT level designers, did not do that. But anyway, this was like the kind of things I took pride in back then, right? But all of this, like these windows and so on, were pretty much enough reason to make Quake 1 at its limit. And in fact, I think if you went up there, because I have a camera, an exit camera there, once again you actually got gray early on, and like got gray, and you had to update your max surfaces. I think there was a specific flag for that. I remember specifically listening to a lot of Depeche Mode Ultra, that album, while working on this map. I'm like, I was just gonna say I'm the world's biggest Depeche Mode fan, and somebody's immediately gonna tell me no you're not, and they will be right. But I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan, right? Was back then, still am. And Ultra was the first album that came out after Alan Wilder left the band, and it was it took a little bit of time to really get into, because you know that they didn't even tour on this one. Pretty much Depeche Mode was rediscovering themselves. They couldn't tour because they didn't have concert setups anymore. If you actually want the story behind this, maybe later I'll tell you, as it has been told, but right now we're going to focus on Quake. But so I remember just listening to that album so much that eventually it grew on me, and you know, those songs I just kept listening and listening. Of course, back then you can actually make it through here, by the way, if you're a good speedrunner, but I'm not, and I don't want to do that right now anyway. Keeping a couple of the tech guys alive here, because you know all of these guys made their way over into medieval times. But yeah, so I was listening to a lot of those kind of songs back then. I like the gameplay here with, or at least the gameplay with the ogres up there, throwing grenades down at you here, and them landing in unpredictable patterns and forcing you to kind of sidestep them. So I thought that was really cool. That guy just got me. Somewhat disappointing. Okay. Spike traps, which again I feel like maybe I should have put a warning sign in here or something on the floor, just make it a little bit easier. There actually is a way to deal with them. Which, oh my god, I just got myself down to 10%. Okay, well, let's see how that goes. Okay, let's see if I can actually hit that button. I'm going to keep playing, because, you know what, I haven't really been fearing for my life yet. Let's see if we can up the ante here a little bit, make me work for my money a little bit. As I'm lower on health. But yes, I wanted to make sure, but I don't think it's actually true, even for Beyond Belief, that all of these spike traps actually had a way to be turned off. But you know what, there was no convention is established by Quake in the first place, so nobody really expected it or looked for it. I think a lot of people just tried to jump through here, which, you know, wasn't exactly ideal. You see some of these textures, I haven't really called them out too much. I made some new custom textures, like this one right here. Mostly, again, just like with Doom, the various modifications of textures that already existed, to just give it a little bit of a special touch without like spending tons of time creating stuff. So, you know, these knights, this is the first time you see them in Beyond Belief. They were pretty much standing in for the Pinky Demons. This guy isn't even coming out. Pinky, like, you had to make them jump out manually. But again, it just doesn't work that well, because there isn't that much differentiation, and you're not prioritizing these guys over other guys and so on. This was knowledge that I did not necessarily have back in 2007 or so on. It's just something that, as I'm thinking back at this, started noticing. I knew about this guy, that's why I was able to kind of adjust to him. I'm sure he would have, actually he did get me. I think he got me with one grenade in the back here, but yeah. Like for Quake and Quake mapping and what we did back then, these kind of staircases were just awesome, because you couldn't do this in Doom, right? Look, here's a staircase and there's an entire area down there. How do you get there? This looks interesting. Look, there's a grenade launcher down there. How do I get the grenade launcher? Like, all of these kind of moments were just awesome. and I try to do that as much as possible. So this, for me, just to spoil it a little bit, is the introduction of the demon. Oh, and he actually got me. I died. So let's, for the first time I believe, so let's load. And oh my god, I don't actually know how to load my quick save because it's not bound. Somebody on the stream has to help me right now because I do not know. Is it quick load? Somebody has to tell me what the actual command is because it's not bound, unfortunately. So this is where somebody on the stream right now tells me what the console command for quick loading is. Otherwise I cannot get back to my quick save. Did not realize. Load quick. Let's see. Load quick. That is entirely correct. Thank you very much. 1 2 purple. Because yeah, for some reason, if I do F9, couldn't execute OCR scripts. I had a whole bunch of these. Like I rebound a whole bunch of these F keys. As you saw me die earlier, you actually see I'm still named OCR Langsuya in everything in here. Should really be braindead Langsuya, we could change it, but that's just because these are still all of the old config files, right, that I have from back then. So this is where I give you the lightning gun, which I thought was really cool, in that I thought it was actually interesting, and I actually have to see what this lightning gun is bound to, because once again my all of my key mappings are off. I figured it was interesting to give it to you much earlier, so that even though you don't get, even though you don't get a lot of ammo, let me actually play it the way you could, which was this. Jibbing everybody, I don't want to. Oh well. But yeah, so there was a way to actually get, there's something weird about this artifact, to actually get teleported in and take everybody out this way. But yeah, I thought it was actually interesting, and I think it is interesting to entice you every so often, to actually give you a weapon that was actually very highly desirable, but that you didn't have a lot of ammo for. So to encourage just a little bit of decision making. Because I didn't really feel that was inherent in the way that the normal weapon layout rollout was happening. You just get progressively stronger weapons, but you know, you just used what you had at the time. So here I feel, if I'm in a, you know, like with a shambler coming up and so on, I will feel good about saving my ammo for that, for a guy like that, for example. Not even letting this guy do anything to me. Oops. Not good then, of course, when you run out of ammo and it defaults to that stupid weapon. You don't want to use it. One more to go. What just streamed in? What just... Okay, there is a... I didn't even remember this, honestly. This guy. Because he actually killed me. Well, it wasn't him, it was his brother. His baby brother, Benny. Killed me earlier. I actually have enough respect for these guys now. So let's save. And one more. Sequence completed. Awesome. What happens now that the secret has been completed? Well, this happens right here. And I'm not sure if there's actually a way to jump through this again, where you don't actually have to do this. Feeding these demons, there's actually a text message there. I'm not sure that's entirely clear. People might have missed that, but hey. So, this is... Use the switch and take care of these guys. So, you know, these guys, 3 of them, a little bit better than their little, like, Night Brothers, because at least you have... You're both strafing while you're also trying to take these guys out. So there's a little bit of gameplay there. Let me remember how you actually get this secret, because I think I very much would like a grenade launcher. I always forget this. I actually remember looking it up and then forgetting it again. Because obviously there's a secret here. And I actually remember forgetting it, seeing somebody do it on the stream, just to forget it again. So I'm not entirely sure. I know it's not up here. I don't think it's up here. Okay, so we actually, because I'm trying to kind of keep an up tempo here. No, it was that one. It just took so much ammo that it's, you know, it actually has a health trigger that's more than just a single shot. Okay, here we go. So this is how you get this secret, and you get your grenade launcher earlier in the game than you usually would. We have the silver key. The silver key means that we can just jump down here, take some damage theoretically, and continue our journey right here. So this specifically is the area where I remember listening to, oh my god, bad, listening to Ultra, listening to Is No Good, It's No Good, and those kind of games. I'm okay with losing these 5 health right there, as long as this guy does not eviscerate me. Like that. Ocealang Suya is not playing very well. You know what? Let's just do bind F9. Load quick. Is that not how you did it? Somebody on the stream tell me, because obviously I don't remember how to do key bindings anymore. Do I have to put it in? I have to put it in quotations? Maybe. So there's a secret here, which you would say. I hate that. Go to the next best weapon, not to the strongest weapon. I'm sure there's a switch here somewhere. But so this secret, of course, advertises itself by actually walking up here. So let's get this. The secret. Pick up some lightning ammo too. So those, of course, were supposed to be like a big reward, you know, a little bit like candy ammo, because every time you get it, you can use the lightning gun more. TD there says I have to put it in quotes. Let's try that out real quick. Load quick. Okay, here we go. Save. Load. Awesome. Here we go. Thank you very much. So this is where we have circled all the way back, which again I think is really cool, and in fact we keep circling back. Ah! I ran out of ammo, was shooting my lightning gun, and it electrocuted me. Not good. And I am completely out of ammo for the shotgun right now, so we will actually have to do this. Actually use it. This was me putting a little bit of thought into how an elevator would work, and putting a little bit of, you know, like behind the scenes in here. I don't remember who it was. It was somebody, I don't know, somebody I really respected as a map designer. Actually put a counterweight, like he actually created, at least in one instance, an elevator where you could see the counterweight going down behind the scenes as the elevator was going up. And I thought it was so cool, because these things ceased. They went from magical elevators that go up and down to something that actually had a little bit of engineering behind it. And here's the key. Now, would I, in hindsight, should I just have put the key up here? Yes. Because as you're going up here, you should have seen this key, right? You should have known that this is how you get the key from the beginning. But it just didn't really occur to me, I guess. Okay, so we are low on health. At this point I actually am kind of kicking myself that I killed all of these guys ahead of time, because I could have gotten a little bit of ammo here, but hey, we shall survive, and if we have to axe our way through the next map, we are going to axe our way through the next map. Now, that is the end of this map, and again, a map that I like quite a bit. We're only playing on skill level 2. I forgot the entire time we're not playing this. No, that's not true. Never mind. I'm just confused as to what skill level is what skill level in here. Skill level 0, 1, and 2, if I remember correctly. So, but yeah, so very much like this level. I think it has this really cool kind of like structure where it keeps looping back on itself. Now again, to give you an idea of what this map looked like when I inherited it, it was actually this map earlier. Again, I don't think I've ever shown this. The map files aren't out there anymore. I don't have the original. So Andreas Fink is one of my really good and dear friends from back then. We used to play Quake and Doom and all the stuff together all the time back then. Used to go out drinking and so on. And this is the first map he ever made. And he just, was inspired to try some map editing as well. Ultimately ran out of, I don't know, if it was patience or time or something like that, and told me, well, you know what, why don't you take this map over and incorporate it into Memento Mori, into Beyond Belief. So this is the start area, which as you just saw, I changed quite a bit. This has like vaulted ceilings and a whole bunch of stuff. But then as you exit, you might remember this area. This is where the, in fact, it still is, the silver key door is. This is where we went below. We killed an orc down here. We have this hallway, which I stretched out a little bit. You will definitely remember this area right here that I ran up. This entire progression, in fact, or if I could actually, that's good. Just do this. Go up here. Well, you're locked out. We actually have people. He had ogres here. Surprise, coming out. Only one more to go. This area up here. And then going all the way through here. So you see, like, this entire area exists the way it existed. In fact, you can see here, there's already something down here, what he had. A whole bunch of stuff down here that he ultimately never connected to anything. But he created this kind of area below an area right here, which I then just prettied up a lot, and I think made it a little bit more presentable. Added some just flourishes in the lighting and in the textures, but the actual progression is in here. Now it runs its course at some point, and that is exactly here. Where, okay, this is where you find the key. Awesome. This is where you actually see this door opening, and he has an ogre coming out. They added various areas, as we saw. You could go back here. This is where you see it even here. This is where you get the lightning gun. And of course I'm actually out of ammo at this point, so this doesn't fully work. And then I think this is where the map just kind of stops. Well, this part is still in here, and this is where we go up to this area, which is empty, which is not really lit either. And this, of course, is where I had to feed the 4 demons and do all of this stuff. So that's what his map looked like. And I took that over, and, a lot of credit goes to him. That's why he's listed first in the actual credits for this as well, because a lot of it was in here. I then, of course, went in and added a whole bunch of stuff. Most notably, my area, my very beloved area with this house in the middle here, and so on. But this is what Beyond Belief 3, Another Fine Mess, looked like before I took it over. Hopefully it gives you a good idea. Alright, we have been streaming for pretty much 2 hours already. Let us go back to the chat real quick and see how people are doing. And I think I'm gonna call it a day here. And then tomorrow play through all of the next maps and do Beyond Belief as well. So let's see what else is on here. So where did we stop? Somewhere up here. Might be GL clear. That might actually be correct to just not get the Hall of Mirrors in there, but that is entirely fine. What Voodoo for Quake alone? That's exactly what I had. So I pretty much stayed with Voodoo. People are just kind of going through their history of their 3D graphics card accelerators. I did Voodoo, Voodoo 2, Voodoo 3. I actually had a Voodoo 5. Before I then went, GeForce and GeForce 1. But yeah, actually had 2 Voodoo 2 stacked when I was at Legend, which is pretty awesome. Matrox Mystique. I never had a Matrox card as a GPU. Skaki says that Ultra is one of the few Depeche Mode albums that he or she dislikes. I actually like Ultra. It's grown on me a lot. I think Exciter is really bad. I mean, in hindsight, there's a reason why they never play any of those songs at concerts anymore. But Ultra, I think, ultimately is pretty good. And then Playing the Angel was really good as well. And then they've kind of tapered off again. But yeah, I actually was listening to Exciter while making Unreal 2 maps, and I was listening to it a lot. But let's be honest, it's not a very good album. Anyway, this is about Quake. Let's keep going. Build Quake. Isn't F9 bound by default? Yes, but we figured all of that out. So Hammerbond asks, do these maps still work with a newer Quake 1 engine? So I'm going to mention it again. This was actually part of this stream already. I'm playing it in Quake Spasm / Fitzquake right here. I will be playing in the next stream using Dark Places, and we'll see how well that works. I think we actually figured out all the bugs. Generally speaking, Fitzquake should just work. Quake Spasm should just work. Stock Windquake works as well. That's what I used when I made Beyond Belief 2008. In Dark Places, you will have to set a bunch of flags and make sure that a bunch of gameplay fixes are not enabled, because they actually break this. But yeah. So we will play in Dark Places when we come back tomorrow. The stream is at noon tomorrow, and we will see, and we will pretty much do a visual upgrade. If we just go back in here, you know, like this is pretty much just GL Quake, the way it looked like back then. We are going to go one step further, and we're going to use high-res textures and a whole bunch of other stuff as well to kind of bring Quake into the modern age. I've been discussing a lot as to if I should just stay true to it or not, and I figured ultimately doing this progression, going from stock software Quake look to hardware Quake to something that it might look like today. We're not going to use all of the bells and whistles. We're not going to use normal maps and that kind of stuff, but it might actually be a good way in which we might show progression. So this is the map we're going to play tomorrow. And they're actually going to see, as we're using high-res textures immediately, because that's one of my special textures, that this is going to be high-res down here, and that up there is still going to be the old low-res textures. See anything else in here? Skill 2 is hard, Skill 3 is nightmare, that is correct, yes, okay, good. For some reason, because I was using Skill 4 when I was doing all my batch files for Doom, Skill 4 is what you wanted to use, because that was ultra-violence. These beams being 5 rivets thick instead of 4 is not problematic. One True Purple asks if I'm going to do Beyond Belief 2008 as well. Yes, I want to get to that in the end. Rubex82 asks, do lives noch in Dallas? Do you still live in Dallas? No, I only lived in Dallas for 10 months, really. I moved to, and we'll talk about it if you want to join me for my sin. I'm going to go through it pretty chronologically, actually. I only lived there ultimately for 10 months or so, and then moved to Virginia, and after 4 years moved to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, so that's where I live right now. So Sleepwalker is, I'm sure a lot of people are going to give me shit for going into like too advanced of a Quake look, but I think, we have 2 hours here of Quake the way it used to look, so doing 2 hours of Quake a little bit more modern for people who want to watch this is actually going to be pretty cool. Let's see, what else do we have? Thanks for the stream. Cool. Beyond Belief 2008 has some awesome tar babies. I tried to make sure that we finally got some use out of the tar babies, because they were the most useless enemy in Quake pretty much ever, right? So yeah, so we will get to that. So I think with that we're done. We've gone for pretty much 2 hours. I think it was a really fun stream. It was really good to come back. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you can do it tomorrow's way as well, I will see you there, and if not, everybody can find this in a couple of hours on YouTube, where we'll upload this as an archive. Thank you so much for coming, for keeping Quake alive, and I will see you tomorrow as we look at more of Quake. And with that, I will sign off. Goodbye.